Pleasure, Ray. Thanks for the opportunity. Whoops, let me unmute myself there. That's the standard greeting these days in 2020, isn't it? You're on mute. And I know, Ray, you've been having internet hassles for the last few days. So maybe for one or two people, you were breaking up a little bit, but hopefully we get through this together. The session is being recorded. And so if there are issues in terms of connectivity or you're experiencing a little bit of internet breakup on your side, you will be able to access the recording a little bit later. But it's really fantastic to be joining you. And thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for taking some time out to just connect in with the team from Iress today and to just think a little bit about the future, about what's going to happen in the next few months and the next few years and how we should respond to that. That's what I do for a living. My business card says that I am a futurist. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't mean that I can predict the future. Although in a book about 15 years ago, I wrote about a number of scenarios that could cause deep disruptive change in the world. And I looked at things like nuclear war and an asteroid hitting the Earth. And I did suggest a global pandemic that caused the whole world to go into quarantine. My publisher at the time said that that was the craziest suggestion I had made and that nobody would believe it. So I'm not predicting nuclear war or an asteroid strike, but 2020 might still tell us to hold its beer for a little while more. Might still have more to come. Hopefully not. I don't think any of us are going to remember this year too fondly. Remember how much we were looking forward to 2020 vision and all of that good stuff, if only we had known. So I'm not claiming to have predicted COVID, but what I do is I try and anticipate disruptive change and then help my clients to prepare for it today. And obviously for the last 6 months or so, our team's focus has shifted from some of the stuff we normally look at around technology and institutional change and demographics and those issues, and has obviously been focusing our attention on COVID. So what we're going to do just very briefly this morning is just give you literally a bird's eye view of what we think the next few months and years are going to have going to look like. And then, as Ray said, I'm going to just talk about 6 ways in which we can respond. Not responding specifically to the crisis, but 6 ways that we can prepare ourselves for any disruption and get ahead of any major change that might happen. As you can see, I'm going to have my slides behind me, so you might want to just rearrange your screen to just maximize my video. I'm not going to be sharing my screen. This is the way I do it. And for those of you who are interested, I'll give you a link at the end of the presentation where you can download the slides. If for whatever reason you'd like a copy of them, you're welcome to get them. Otherwise, just take screenshots as we go along if you want to. And finally, don't forget that you can at any stage during the presentation pop in into the Q&A section. Let's do that there. The chat section. Chat if you want to, just say hello to everybody if you want to. But if you want to ask me a question, pop it into the Q&A and we'll take those questions. We'll leave some time at the end for those questions and come back to them. So what are we going to expect for the next few months? I think most of us now in September 2020 are realizing that COVID is not a short-term thing. It's not going to just go away on its own. And even if the governments around the world, whichever country you might be in, I know there's a lot of South Africans here, but there's also UK and Europe and so on, whatever your government does in terms of regulations over the next little while, mainly where most of us are in the world right now, is we're at a point where the governments are saying, okay, it's up to you now. You can go out into public, you can try and get the economy going again, as long as you don't give anybody COVID. So wear a mask, keep physical distancing, check your temperature, sanitize regularly, and self-isolate or quarantine if you feel you've got it. And we're going to have to keep doing that until we either have a vaccine or we get herd immunity. Herd immunity will come after about 2 years or so, when more than 70% of people have had COVID. A vaccine, well, who knows how long that will take. It certainly isn't going to be here this year. Even if by some miracle we find a vaccine that works today, still has to go through 2 more stages of testing. The most advanced vaccines are only at stage 3 of testing. There are 5 stages they have to go through. And you might have heard that a big Oxford vaccination test that was linked to Wits University, that was cancelled last week because it isn't working. And it's actually making people sick. So they've got to go back and they've got to re-engineer it. That's how vaccines work. We're watching science in real time at the moment. And it takes probably about 2 years. Even if we found a good vaccine in the next few days and weeks, you've still got to do more testing. Then you've got to manufacture more than 15 billion units, because most vaccines require 2 shots a month apart. And then you've got to manufacture those units. Then you've got to distribute them around the world. Then you've got to get people to take them. Then you've got to ensure that people did take them. Then you've got to wait to see if it's effective. So look, basically, I know this is not the motivational part of the message, but this is the part that says we've got to learn how to live with COVID for at least another year, maybe into 2022. And for those of you who are thinking, but it's not really that much of a disease and, not a lot of people are dying. That's really good news, by the way. Well done to the medical system for reducing the fatality rate. My sister got COVID 3 or 4 weeks ago, very badly, had to go to hospital. And I think 6 months ago, she might have ended up passing away. Because 6 months ago, we didn't know much about this disease. Now she was out of hospital on the same day, actually. They said, no, you can go home. They filled her full of antibiotics. They told her to lie on her stomach. She checked her oxygen every 2 hours. So we know how to deal with this, and we've reduced the fatality rate. But here's the real problem, and this is the bit people need to be talking about more. Although less than 1% of people will die because of COVID, about 20% of people get a very bad version of it. My sister says that was the sickest and the nastiest thing she's ever had in her life. And I think that's what a lot of people are reporting who get the bad version of COVID. Worse than that, and this is bad news again, the medical fraternity are telling us that it looks as if COVID has a lasting impact on your system. And that people like my sister who had the bad version are going to find that there are ongoing issues for the rest of their lives. Bottom line is, don't get COVID if you can help it. We still don't know who gets the bad version and who doesn't. We don't know why that happens. So for the next 18 months to 2 years, we've got to get this balance right. That's the message I want to start with. There's a balance between kind of easing into our lives and then pulling back again when a COVID incident happens. So it's not the balance between lives and livelihoods. That, I don't think, that was always a false debate. We had to do both, had to look after people's health and the economy as much as possible. And we can argue all day whether we got the balance precisely right or not, whether we could have done things differently. Doesn't really matter. We are where we are now. Going forward from here, the balance is about trying to get back into our normal lives, doing everything we can do, sending our kids to school, going back to church, getting back into our gyms and our physical activity, going back to work, going on holiday, but doing all of it, recognizing that COVID is in the system and we've got to keep ourselves safe. And that means we can only do those things if we physical distance, wear masks, sanitize, etc. And this is more important, if a COVID incident happens at a school, at a restaurant, at a workplace, you've got to step back a little bit for a moment, and you've got to self-isolate everybody, track and trace, and make sure that we contain things. And basically, there's no right or wrong here. Should a school open? Of course, schools should try and open. We must try and get kids back to school. But should a school close? Well, yes, of course, schools should close if there's a concern with COVID and a COVID hotspot. Same with a restaurant, same with a hotel, and so on. So there's no use fighting about this, arguing about it. And basically, certainly in South Africa, besides international travel, you can pretty much do anything that you can do if you can maintain that balance. So that's where we are right now. And maybe that's not news to you, but maybe you just needed somebody to just let you know that you can't just power through this for the next few weeks and by Christmas we'll all be fine. It isn't going to be fine by Christmas. It's going to be fine in the sense that it's going to be different and we should just get on with it. But that requires us to change quite a lot of things. And that really is the bulk of my message to you today. How do we now live in this world? You see, if we are going to be in a COVID disruption for a 2-year period, kind of imagine like you're stretching an elastic band. When you stretch an elastic band and you let it go, boom, sometimes that elastic band snaps back. I mean, that's the whole point of an elastic band, is that when you let it go, it snaps back. But sometimes if you've pulled an elastic band too far for too long, it loses that snapback and then it stays. And that's what we've got to think about now. What's going to snap back and what is going to be changed forever? I think that is the most important question for all of us to be asking and trying to answer in our personal lives, our families, and in our businesses. What as we stretch and hold this COVID disruption for now, when it's over, maybe there's a miracle vaccine. Maybe I'm wrong, there's a miracle vaccine and then it's over within a few months from now. But if I'm right, it'll be over in 2022 sometime. So we will have had COVID disruption for a long time. What's going to snap back and what isn't? And I think quite a lot is not going to snap back. I think there's going to be a lasting legacy for COVID for the rest of this decade and beyond. Some things will snap back though. I just weirdly had a whole lot of friends who were supposed to get married this past weekend. I suppose they're thinking, get into September, get into spring, that's when the wedding's going to be. These are people who got engaged last year and were planning for this year. Those have all been cancelled. I think every single one of my friends cancelled their weddings. They didn't want to do a Zoom wedding. Some people did, but my friends didn't. And I think as soon as they possibly can, they're going to get that wedding going and get some form of celebration. And so things like family gatherings and weddings and big birthdays are going to, I think, snap back quite quickly. In fact, wedding venues and wedding photographers and things like that probably going to be overwhelmed with demand as soon as we get to lockdown level 1 or we're able to do these things. So just let's get you a little bit involved here. We can be slightly interactive. Why don't you just grab your phone, or you can just switch to another tab on your browser for a second. You can go to this link here, ahaslides.com/Iress, right? Or just go to the QR code. So just point your phone's camera at the QR code and it should just pick it up and automatically take you to this website. And on that website, you will see this question. What is likely to just snap back to normal? I've given you an example of weddings. What else do you think? Please do get involved here. We don't just want to make this one way. We could have pre-recorded and just shown you a video on YouTube. Let's get value from being live here. Excellent. I see a few of you jumping in here. Excellent. There are 23 of you already responding. You're just thinking about it. Let's have a look. Oh, I was using Iress's color coding and I'm not sure. Maybe give me a second. I just have to quickly change this here so that my font is white. And then we'll actually be able to see this. Now, I need to tell you here, I am like triple multitasking here. This is insane. Just give me a second to try and sort this out here. There we go. That should work. Okay, we'll do the same here as well. Okay. Right, let's get back to that and see what we can see. Okay, so what are you telling us here? School sport, absolutely. I think sport at all levels, right? All of our physical activities and so on. Life in general, that's a very general comment. I'm not so sure. You see, I don't think that business travel is going to snap back. For someone that said that. I honestly don't think that client meetings are going to snap back. I think a lot of people are realizing that some of the meetings, at least, that they were doing face-to-face and all of the traveling that they were doing to go to those meetings is unnecessary, that we can do some of these things via Zoom. Just take, for example, this meeting, right? This event that you're at now. If it had been a face-to-face meeting, less than half of you would have been able to attend. You would have had to take the whole day out of the office to spend some time with Iress. And I know that they've done that in the past, and they've been good meetings and they've been valuable times. But I think that we will probably see a hybrid in the future. That maybe we'll have less face-to-face meetings and a lot more of these things. Braais with our mates, yeah, we're missing that, aren't we? So, I think obviously there are some things that are going to snap back, but that's a short-ish list, right? Given how much our lives have been disrupted over the last little while. So let's maybe talk about all the other things, because I think that there are a whole lot of things that are not going to snap back. And so we need to be prepared for a changed world. We need to be prepared for a world that after the stretch of COVID disruption and lockdown, that this world doesn't just go back to normal, but that actually a lot of things change. So there's 6 things for us to go through very, very quickly. And don't forget, at any stage, you can put a question into the Q&A box and I'll answer that a little bit later. So 6 things very, very quickly to go through. I don't think most of them need any explanation because they're obvious, but I think this will get you into the correct mindset to do more than just survive a COVID crisis, but to actually thrive in the rest of the 2020s. So the first thing is we need to expect more disruption. What I mean by that is that we were already being disrupted. The 2020s already promised huge disruption. You've all been to conferences for the last 5 years, and every conference you've been to for the last 5 years has given you a list of disruptors that are coming our way. Artificial intelligence, automation, robotics, machine learning, cloud, mobility, that's all the tech stuff. Then you can add climate change, sustainability, and those issues there. Then you add geopolitical change. You've got Brexit that's still coming up. Good grief, what a mess that is at the moment. You've got the America-China trade war. You've got China and India looking like they might want to start an actual war. The list goes on and on and on, right? None of these are new on the list. All of these things are things that have already been coming. And here's the point, right? None of these things are looking at us. None of these disruptions are looking at us and saying, oh, I see you dealing with COVID. Okay, you've got enough to deal with. I'll come back later. No, in fact, I think some of these things are moving even faster. Let me give you an example, right? So here's a headline from a UK newspaper, The Guardian. When they talk about high streets, they mean retail, big shopping malls, big shopping centers, big shops, right? And 140,000 jobs have been lost. I mean, that's just like, wow, what a number. Except look at the date. That's last year. That's a headline from December last year. That's last year's number before COVID. The disruption coming to retail was already coming. For the South African guys, Edgar's didn't die because of COVID. Edgar's died because Edgar's was nearly dead already, and they've just used COVID as the final excuse and reason to say that's it, we're never coming back from this. Other companies, other examples from South Africa, Standard Bank, cutting jobs and closing branches. They did that in 2018. This is 2 years ago that they were doing this. I think that what COVID has done is accelerated some of those digital transformation and digital disruptions. And if we are going to succeed in the 2020s, we can't be so totally focused on COVID that we forget all of these other things are happening. In fact, I'd suggest that the COVID spotlight is just highlighting the need for some of these other things. One of my mining clients, for example, has been trying for 2 years to get their IT department to do smart contracting. This is a mine with hundreds, probably even thousands of suppliers and contractors who were all filling in paper forms, some of them even faxing those into the admin office, and a massive administrative office. And as I say, been begging IT to implement smart contracts for years now. Cyril Ramaphosa announces that lockdown will happen. What was it? A Sunday night he gave us the news, and he said by Thursday you're going to be working from home. By Wednesday, IT had implemented smart contracting at that company. And it's working brilliantly, as of course everybody expected it to, and they will never go back. And I think that there are a lot of companies who are realizing we can do things at a digital distance. We can do things digitally that we maybe hadn't thought before that we could do. And we need to expect that especially those digital disruptions will keep coming and probably even come faster. But then you've also got things like climate change and sustainability and other issues that are coming at huge speed now. I'll give you a simple example, just one more example to make the point, if you even need another one. Mayor of Paris was re-elected about 4 weeks ago in a mayoral election. And she promised as one of her election campaigns that she was going to make the Paris Olympics plastic free. So she's been re-elected, and now she said that is now the rule. Within 4 years, Paris must be plastic free for the Olympics. And then her plan, I guess, is to keep it plastic free after that. I've got clients like Coca-Cola and Unilever and Kraft Heinz and Nestle who are absolutely freaking out at the moment. Because how do you do that within the next 4 years? And her argument is, well, we were able to deal with COVID within a few days when we realized it was a massive global emergency. So why can't we do this? Why can't we do climate change at the same speed? Okay, point made. The first and most important thing for you to get through the rest of the 2020s is to not merely aim to survive COVID. If you survive COVID and then are crushed by whatever the next disruptor is that comes your way, what was the point? First task, survive COVID. Second task, make sure you get ready for all the other disruptions that are coming your way, which leads to my second point. And let me get this guy to help me make the point. Okay, this is Charles Darwin. I'm sure you knew that. And Charles is probably most famous for a particular quote. Now, in fact, we can get you to be a little bit more interactive here again. Won't you go to the chat box? Please, not the Q&A box. That will just freak Renee out in a moment. The Q&A is for questions to me. I want you to go into the chat box. This would be the equivalent of I'm going to get you to answer a question, and if we could get you to all switch your mics on, I'd just get you to shout out the answer. But get your fingers ready, fastest fingers first. Let's see who answers this, because Charles Darwin is probably his most famous quotation. See if you can complete it for me. Charles Darwin said, "It is survival of the..." Go in the chat box. Go, go, go. Okay, Thomas got in there first. Well done. I don't know, Renee, if we're handing out prizes today, but you can give a prize to Thomas for saying the fittest, the fittest, the fittest, the fittest. That's exactly right. Okay, we're all saying the fittest. Well done. You all got it wrong. That's what I would have said because that's what my science teacher taught me. But Charles Darwin never said that. I think you should phone your school up and get a bit of a refund or something because we were all taught the wrong thing. I'm serious. His actual quote from the early pages of his famous book, Origin of Species, says it's not the strongest of the species, nor the most intelligent, nor the sexy. And then he goes on further and he talks about sexy and fit and, any other adjective you can think of. It is the one that is most responsive to change. Now, I'm sure your science and biology teacher will say, yeah, but the fittest of the organisms is most likely to be responsive to change. So they'll weasel out of it one way or the other. But seriously, it isn't just the survival of the fittest. This makes so much sense, obviously. I mean, I don't even have to explain this to you. That when the environment around us is changing, the organisms, and now let's speak business language, the organizations that are most likely to survive, and more than survive, are most likely to thrive, are those that recognize that sometimes you have to change your plans. Right? Sometimes you have to look at the world around you and go, oh, okay, we can't do what we plan to do. Let's adapt. Let's learn to be more adaptable. So that's the second skill, is to learn how to be adaptable. And I think this is really important at this time of year because in the next few weeks, many of you are going to go into your planning cycle for next year. And you're going to spend a whole lot of time, just like you do every year, talking about next year, talking about your plans, setting budgets, setting targets. And I just want to ask you a very simple question. Why? Why? I mean, some of you are thinking I'm crazy to even suggest that you could go into 2021 without a plan. I'm not suggesting you go in without a plan, but I'm suggesting that your plan needs to be how to be adaptable. Your structure should be your strategy. Your strategy for 2021 needs to be how do we build a more adaptable organization, not these are our targets, these are our budgets, this is what we're going to deliver. Because if that's what you go into 2021 with, I promise you that by about March 15th, that piece of paper will be worth less than toilet paper is. And toilet paper is worth nothing because all of you have hoarded about 1,000 rolls of it in your garage a few weeks ago, and you're never going to run out. So we've got to think differently about every part of how we do business. Adaptability is not just a little bit of flexibility here or there. It's a whole different mindset around how we approach business, which obviously, if we had the time, we could spend a day on that and talk about what we need to do. But here are a few things, and this follows then on into another few of these skill sets I think we need. So adaptable organizations are organizations that are very comfortable to experiment, to try things out. And probably the best example of what it feels like to be in constant experimental mode is you can find this on your phones, right? My phone up in the top corner there is an iPhone. Pride of place, number one app, first screen is my app store, okay, or the Play Store or whatever. Why is it the App Store? Because the App Store is where I go to every single day, in fact, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, to check if any of my apps have been updated. I'm just double checking. I updated, I mean, this is insane, right? Because I updated at about 7 o'clock this morning. Where are we now? 3.5 hours later, I've now got 12 apps that need updating again. This is the mindset of experiment more is built into software developers because what they do is they are constantly updating. They're constantly thinking of new features that they can add, new ways of doing things. Every now and again, They do an update and they break something. They don't do it deliberately, but they break something, or they remove a feature without asking you, and it was the one feature you were so in love with. So what do? Well, you contact them and you say, hey guys, what happened to that feature? Or hey guys, this thing is broken. And nobody freaks out. Okay, maybe if it's 3 hours before your month-end salary run, you freak out a little bit if it's a payroll package that's broken. But nobody really freaks out. The developers just say, oh, okay, no problem. Give us a few moments. We'll send an update. We'll send it to you. Now, that's the mindset of a software developer, right? So in your organizations, when last did you do an update? When last did you update the terms and conditions of the staff engagement that people have? Now, if I say terms and conditions, you're thinking I'm talking about policies and procedures. No, I'm just talking about the experience people had. The experience people have of working for you. When last did it get an update? When last did your clients feel that they got an update in the way that they engaged with you? That's what I mean by experiment more. Not big experiments that can blow your business up and burn the place down. Small improvements that you do every single day, every single week. Removals of irritations and frustrations that just make life better and better and better. And here's how all of this fits together then, right? We are at a moment where COVID has forced us to experiment more. We had no options. And so everybody, it might not feel like an update, but it's certainly a change. And so we can use this COVID crisis to learn what it feels like to be constantly experimenting. And we can realize, yeah, it's a little bit tough, and maybe we're not loving it, but it also isn't killing us, and we're getting it done. Now, the fourth thing that you can do is embrace difference. I'm not talking here about BEE and diversity and compliance and those sort of things. I'm talking about just getting different people's opinions, differences of opinion, different worldviews into our system. Which voices do you listen to, and how much do you listen to them? Again, we could spend hours on that. Let me leave that there. The fifth thing you need to do, and this should be obvious, is give up control. You cannot be an adaptive organization responding if you've got a hierarchical system where everybody has to go up to the boss to get approval. We need to be more like what we see in nature, these bird murmurations, I think they're called, or like fish swimming. Who's the boss? Who's giving the instruction to turn left and fly up and go down and settle now? No, these are self-directed teams. This is a whole different way of thinking about things. You know, in sort of traditional organizations, here's what happens. Information flows to where the authority is. You've got people, salespeople working at the front line, speaking to their customers. During COVID now, we've had to change a whole lot of things. The salesperson gets an idea from the customer. Does the salesperson have the authority to change the contract with the customer? Probably not, right? Salesperson has to come back to a sales team. Sales manager has to then take it to the executive. They have to sign off. Legal and compliance want to get involved to make sure everything's okay. Then marketing has to get involved to make sure that it gets put on the right Pantone colored letterhead and gets sent back to the client. I'm not talking about Iress here. I'm seeing Renee roll her eyes. She would never do that. I'm talking about big traditional organizations, right? And by the time the thing gets back to the customer, life has moved on, or it's not quite what the customer wanted, because information is flowing to where the authority sits. The information is on the front end of the business with the people doing the job, and the authority sits with the exec team. That's not an adaptable organization. That's not a responsive organization. You need authority to flow to where the information is. You need the people at the front line of your business to have a lot more authority to get the job done. And that leads to my final point, which should make a little bit of sense now that you've heard everything else. We need to take this opportunity that COVID gives us to not just rebuild as soon as things go back, not just wish that things would snap back, but to realize we've got a once in a lifetime opportunity. I even go so far as to say it's actually an invitation that the universe is giving you to reimagine, to think about your business, to think about your processes, your systems, to think about yourself, your mindsets, your habits, the things that you consider to be right and good and normal, and to simply ask, does it always have to be like that? Let me give you a simple example, right? So I'm getting a lot of people as I chat to them saying, oh, I really want to get back to the office. Sure, we can all work from home, but a lot of people are not feeling they're doing a great job of working from home. They're more stuck at home surviving a crisis, and they'd love to get back to the office. Some people, the work from home thing is going to stay forever, but some people want to get back to the office. So fair enough. I then ask them, why? What are you really missing about the office? And they have this romantic stare into the distance and they go, oh, I'm missing the people. You know, I'm just missing being able to walk around the office and just chat with other human beings, to be able to go over to a colleague's desk and just ask them a question and get the answer straight away without having an email or waiting for a message to come back. I'm an introvert, right? I'm one of those guys who likes my own space and gets energy from being alone. For every person like you who is missing the office and just walking around and chatting to people, there are people like me who used to hate people like you in the office, because I would see you coming and going, oh, good grief, now I'm going to be interrupted by that chatterbox again. I'm joking. We are all missing human interaction. But do you get what I'm saying? We've romanticized this office we think we're missing. You've romanticized the fact that the aircon was never the right temperature. People always used to steal your lunch out of the fridge. The coffee is gross. You know, there's a whole lot of stuff about the office that isn't actually nice. And let's all be honest, none of us like rush hour traffic. Renee, for those who live in Port Elizabeth, rush hour traffic is when there's lots of cars on the road at the same time. Okay, no, I'm joking. I know that there's a 10-minute rush hour in Port Elizabeth on a Tuesday. But you know, in Joburg, in Cape Town, in places around the country, and in Port Elizabeth sometimes, there are rush hour. Now, we're not missing rush hour. Anybody missing the commute to work? No. So let's not just as soon as possible go back to the office exactly the way it was. Do you get what I'm saying with this example? Let's say, what do we really want to get from an office? Let's call it the office of the future then, to just make it sound special. What do we want the office of the future to look like? And if that future is October 2020 or February 2021, then let's not just rebuild the office and go back to the way things were and be normal. Let's reimagine what it could be. What an opportunity. Why wouldn't we take this opportunity to reimagine every part of our business, to reimagine conferences and events and exhibitions, to reimagine training, learning and development, to reimagine talent, to reimagine where we can get talent. If geography is dead and a lot of people can work from home, then you can employ talent from anywhere in the world and you can apply for jobs anywhere in the world because geography doesn't matter anymore. Let's reimagine our systems, our processes, our relationships. And of course, let's get back to our sponsors today. Let's reimagine what Iress can do for you. Don't let them just survive the crisis with you. Put pressure on Iress to deliver a reimagined experience and to allow them to show you what they've been doing for the last few months, to be frank, because as far as I know, they haven't slept that much in the last few months to make sure that everything's working, right? I'm not here to promote them. They can promote themselves. But I am here to say that we need to reimagine, not just rebuild. So, job number one, survive the crisis. If you're watching this video, you've probably done that already, at least in some form. Maybe it's not your best life ever, but you're doing that, so well done. But job number two, way more important than job number one, is use this crisis as a dress rehearsal for all of the disruptions that are still going to come our way. Make sure that as you survive the COVID crisis, you're also stepping back a little bit and learning and asking yourself, are we doing a good job? Do we have the right systems, processes, structures in place? Do we have the right partners in place? Are we doing things in a way that will survive all future disruptions and in fact turn those disruptions from crises into opportunities to step ahead? I hope that's useful for you. As I said, I'd give you an address to download my slides if you want them. There it is up there. Let me get my hands right. gettalk.at/Iress16sep. Just for you guys. It'll be there for a few days, so you don't have to rush. But included there are a number of resources as well. I've put a link to a free online course that I've done about the fourth industrial revolution and how to reimagine. So to give you some more insights, and you can share that with whoever you want to at your workplace. And please feel free to share these slides with anybody you want to. And you can get hold of me in any of these ways. But now, you can get hold of me by just going into the Q&A box and asking a question if you have any questions. Renee, I don't see any questions have come through yet. Maybe some went into the chat box that I didn't see. But anybody, if you have a question, now's your opportunity to ask it. Sure, what a great question. Wow. I suppose, let me go back to this slide, which I think is the slide that kind of sums up where I find myself now. There's probably three answers to your question, Ray. The first is, I've been fascinated that companies have done a better job of surviving this COVID disruption than I might have thought they would. If we had looked ahead in January, if I had put a presentation together and said, here's what 2020 is actually going to look like, and I'd put it out there, first of all, nobody would have believed me. They would have said, no, this is nuts, this is crazy. And secondly, we would have thought that we would have collapsed. Let's just talk South Africa. If you had told me that we would have had a global pandemic with over 600,000 people falling sick, nearly 20,000 people dead, I would have imagined our medical system in chaos. I would have imagined hospitals overflowing. We saw those pictures in Italy and New York, and we haven't had that. It has surprised me how resilient we are as people, as human beings, that we kind of, and maybe it's even specifically as South Africans, we get the snot kicked out of us every day, and we just get up and just keep doing it. And I think there's something about that's great. So I've liked that. I think, secondly, I've been fascinated, having said that, at the response of leadership in organizations. Number of leaders who I think are just a little bit lost at the moment. They would never have said that they were control freaks, but they are just lost because their staff is not in their office. They're saying things to me like, how do I know that my people are working? How do I check that they're working hours? How do I check that they're at their computer? How do I stop them taking a longer lunch break? And my mind just blows up, because I think you're asking all the wrong questions. Surely you should be seeing the opportunity now to give people more autonomy, to do all the things the experts would have told you to do, to build better staff engagement. What a beautiful opportunity to do it now, except they default back to command and control. Um, and so to go back to another point that I made, I think this is one. It's one of the most difficult thing for kind of old school leaders to do, but one of the most important things for you and your team to think about. So I've been fascinated that a lot of leaders have found this more difficult than they would have thought to do. So kind of maybe the flip side of the coin, that we kind of, I think most people have stepped up and are doing better than they would have imagined if we had told them what this year would look like. But a lot of leaders are struggling to realize that we are in a new paradigm of engagement and leadership. And hopefully those two things don't clash with each other over the next few weeks and months. Right. Oh, I see there are some questions coming in there. Renee, go for it. Excellent. So, Dave, your microphone should be switched on. Here we go. Yeah, David, we can go for it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And, David, and you give me a great opportunity to basically summarize my 6 points again, because the my clients who have been most responsive during this change. So a lot of my clients are doing quite well, and in fact, a few of my clients are having their best year ever at the moment. And the reason for that is that they had done exactly what you're asking about. They had realized that you have to build, let's call it adaptive intelligence, into your system. So you can't wait until a crisis hits you and then say, how do we respond? You actually have to build this fitness for the future, this adaptive ability into your system, so that when you're hit by a big crisis, you're already moving. If you don't mind a sports analogy, I remember hearing Jonty Rhodes. Yeah, I am that old, so you could use a younger cricketer if you wanted to. But Jonty was, I think, the first guy who did this deliberately. You know, he burst on the scene, and everybody just remarked what an amazing fielder he was. He did something that no cricketer had done before in the field. He would start to walk when the bowler was running in. And he would start to move, even if he was in the slips. He was hardly ever in the slips, but he, even if he couldn't walk forward, he would be bouncing on between one foot and the other, just getting some movement into his system, so that when the ball came, he was already moving. Every now and again, he might have been moving in slightly the wrong direction, and so he had to change his direction. But the point is, you've got to have a little bit of momentum to start with. So, Dave, the answer to the question is the 6 things I told you about today. If you do those things regularly with your team, so they don't need a massive away day Bosporat thing, you know, once a year for 3 days, looking at the other disruptions. So let me go through those again. Expecting more disruptions, building adaptive intelligence into your system, experimenting more. That's a huge one. Getting everybody to have a little experiment on the go at all times. Getting differences of opinion, different people contributing, getting in, giving up control, and then this concept of reimagination. If you do all of those 6 things on a regular basis, include one of those elements for 5 minutes in every team meeting, you know, once a week, you talk about one or other of those elements, you will build that adaptive intelligence. You probably still will be freaked out by a big disruption that comes along, but you'll snap back quickly and you'll say, okay, we can do this. So that's why we had the session today, to answer that question exactly and build that adaptability into your system. Yeah. Well, I really honestly hope that companies will give you that option. And we're seeing more and more examples of companies all around the world who are doing this. Goldman Sachs is, I think, not Goldman Sachs. It's gone out of my mind now. The Jamie Dimon, who's the big bank that he's with. Anyway, they've just announced, one of the big banks in America has just announced nobody ever has to come back to the office. I know that Deloitte here in South Africa have just built their massive new building out near the Mall of Africa. And they're looking at that and saying, we don't think we're ever going to fill it because we don't think people need to be coming back. But I think that the real thing to do is to not try and push for your company to give you a work from home policy. I think you need a work from anywhere policy. So for me, the shift needs to be the default setting 6 months ago was you must be in the office unless there's a compelling reason for you to be somewhere else for a little while, but then come back to the office. Now the default setting needs to be you can work from anywhere as long as you get your job done. And if there's a compelling reason to come to the office, a team meeting, a connection, a staff session, or whatever, then come to the office. And I just think it's a shift of default setting now that we can work from anywhere. And that, of course, will have massive knock-on implications around corporate properties and investment portfolios. And my goodness, I think that's going to be one of the biggest long-term legacies of COVID, is the shift away from having to go to the office, because your boss can't say anymore, you won't work if you're at home. Right. I'm watching the time. We're heading towards the hour. Most of you have got another webinar to go to in 3 minutes' time. So maybe we'll call it quits there. Thank you so much for your interaction, for those great questions, and I hope this was useful. Thank you.